All right, let's watch our boy. This is his channel, by the way. If you guys haven't subscribed, please do. Here we go. Okay, starting it now.
Wait, is this Tannor's video?
Global regulatory body that is governing almost all the banks across the world. They're called the Basel Committee on Banking Standards, or BCBS. With the help to strengthen regulations, supervision, and risk management in banks, it's so important that they were able to step in during the 2008 financial crisis, because after that happened, they set in something new, the Basel III Accord. This was introduced to improve the bank ability to actually absorb shock if there was to be some sort of large financial stress because of global meltdown or something along these lines. There were other added things with transparency and disclosures, but that's all boring banking stuff. What's most important is that banks are being monitored better than ever now, and this is not just in the United States. This is across 27 different countries all across the world. But there are three main principles in the Basel III Accord. 1, minimal capital requirements. 2, leverage ratios. And 3, liquidity requirements. But for this video, we're going to be exclusively focusing on the first principle, which by far is the most important. When it comes to minimum capital requirements, what they're referring to is Tier 1 capital, or CET1. Well, that's a little bit of a lie. It's actually in reference to a capital adequacy ratio. It's calculated by dividing a bank's total capital versus its risk-weighted assets. But you don't have to remember all this. For the most part, let's just simplify it down into Tier 1 capital, as this is by far the largest part of the equation. And it's also the highest quality of regulatory capital that central banks look at whenever they're going to judge risk management from a bank's perspective, like Sofi. But back to the good stuff. As the Basel Committee actually set the minimum requirement for a Tier 1 capital ratio, which was previously, before 2008, at 2%, is now at actually 7%. So much more restrictive whenever it comes to the amount of capital that they have to have on hand. Anything above 7% is considered well capitalized for a bank to be able to handle a large amount of defaults, for example. And due to a lot of bear opinions and low stock prices getting people really concerned, I wanted to share what the central bank thinks of Sofi in general as being risky whenever it comes to defaults coming for their personal loan segment, for example. Because who knows, if our Tier 1 capital is low and the ratio is below that 7%, then we could definitely be at a chance of default here. But whenever you dive into Sofi's financial statement, you can see that their CET1 is a little bit different than you would imagine at 16.4%, much safer than the 7% requirement that would consider us a well-capitalized bank. But that's just a regulatory requirement. I mean, what are we actually doing compared to the competitors to actually see if we're well-capitalized? And just looking here at the biggest banks in America, we can see that we are second place to only TD Bank. Adding these all up, you can see that the average for all of these banks is 11.7% on a CET1 ratio. Even looking at Warren Buffett's golden child fintech, right, Ally Financial, whenever we look at their CET1 ratio, you could see it's only at 9.3%. Now, according to the central banks that actually set this metric, they are still very safe. But comparatively to Sofi, it is much more risky than we actually give them credit for. Now, they're doing this because they want to grow even faster. Now, for the riskier companies, it should be lower because they're trying to take more risks versus a TD Bank or something like this that's so established they don't even need to right now, especially if they're considering a worse time ahead. They're going to be more safe right now if we are in, let's say, a doom and gloom area. Now, I'll give it credit. I'd be lying to say that Sofi's, Tier 1 capital ratio is not going to go down over time, right? This is also because we just more recently became a bank, and so we still have probably a little bit more room to drop down. But whenever you put it into a perspective of a bank that's been there, very much the same size as us, but yet, had the bank charter even longer, you look at Lending Club, for example, they're still at 15.2% on a CET1 ratio. Remember that the ratio being high can actually slow growth going forward. So we don't necessarily want that, as we don't want to be conservative because we're still very much a growth company. This is exactly what Ally Financial understands because they still want to grow, right? They're still in the growth stages. However, even whenever you compare that to Sofi, right, we're even beating them in that area as well, growing much faster than them. So who knows? I mean, the Bears will be back with more arguments. Don't worry about that. But as long as we keep our capital ratios in good standings, I'm going to have to trust the 450-member board that are setting the worldwide standard for banking going forward. So just as I was finishing up everything for this video, I just wanted to jump in because Anthony Noto just purchased an additional 1.1 million shares of Sofi over the past 4 days. That accounts for over $5 million worth of Sofi shares that he has just purchased in the last couple days. And some additional clarity as well, that actually increases his total Sofi position by over 25%. But that's his own ownership, not the ownership of the actual company. He actually owns a very small portion of the company. But this is not just chump change for Noto, where he can just run around spending $5 million here and there. If you actually look at Anthony Noto's salary in the past year, it was $1.42 million. Now, this is not including stock options, because why would it, right? Why would anyone actually be, selling their Sofi shares to buy more Sofi shares? It doesn't make any sense. And plus, going through his actual disclosures, he has not been doing that at all. But out of this $1.4 million that he makes every year, he's actually based out in California, which means he pays a 48% 8.4% tax rate, meaning he only really takes home $732,000. So after he pays for all of his daily expenses, then afterwards he can actually accumulate enough to start making SoFi purchases. And obviously he hasn't been.
That was a good point, by the way. I thought that was one of the best points of the video. Like, I forgot he's in Cali. I mean, he doesn't make that much. He's not making 30, 40 million a year. So $5 million purchase is actually a sizable amount from him. Like, maybe he sold a lot of Twitter, but that is a lot for him.
Waiting like 6 years to make this purchase only through salary. I mean, he's a wealthy man before SoFi even happened, right? Through Twitter or even Goldman Sachs. But this being said, it's still a massive purchase and a great show of confidence for SoFi. Chris Patel, a noted SoFi bear, said it best on our last SoFi Weekly podcast.
Guy like Anthony Noto, who I'm telling you, this guy is buying a ton of shares. Like CEOs buying shares of their own company is a very healthy sign. That is the biggest form of shareholder alignment that you could possibly get.
So I just thought I'd add this extra insight because this is a massive purchase from Anthony, and I'm so excited to see it. There's also been so many little tiny details that I've been wanting to talk about, which I absolutely put a video out there that kind of conglomerates all those ideas. If you could like this.
Make sure to like it, subscribe. That was a great fucking video. Tanner, you're muted. Everyone's muted. Let me unmute you guys.
Oh, I fucking love that. You just
That was
did
great
Chris
editing,
dirty
bro.
in that last slide.
Yeah, you put the
Thank
most
you.
bullish
Thank you.
in there.
And I love how you call him Anthony, like you guys are like close personal friends. Like Anthony bought 5 million shares. Like what? It's Mr. Noto, mofo.
Next thing he's going to start calling him
Not a
T-Bone.
chance.
Yeah, Tony.
Tony just purchased some shares.
Yeah.
Steven, what was your reaction to that video, especially the interest rates thing and keeping a reserve?
Yeah, I think it was very interesting. Tanner always hits the good math points.
No, but I mean,
Cool.
like, I do think that's something that I wanted to talk about because you know what, you can say that there might be a large amount of risk, but then whenever we actually look at the numbers, you know, these regulators in federal banks or central banks do not agree with you. You know what I mean? They think it used to be 2%. Now it's 7%. Like that is a massive difference. And we're at 16%. We're not even near where they think that our risk is actually going to be, you know, nipping us in the butt, you know? So who knows?
I think it's something we need to revisit in a couple of months.
Yeah. Yeah.
Chris says he's about to claim copyright on your video.
Yeah. Well, you did it on
Chris,
SoFi Weekly. So unfortunately, I don't think you have much.
Chris, at some point, you're going to have to walk us through this whole Credit Suisse idea because their income statement and their balance sheet tell two completely different stories. And while it trades at a very deep discount to book, there are things that are outright scary. So we will have to do a separate podcast.
Chris just probably got a random idea today. He was looking at some stupid note. He's like, "Oh, Credit Suisse, that's another bear argument against SoFi." And he put it in the chat. Like that's literally what happened, bro. That's right. He's up. You guys want to see some gain porn right now? He sent me this picture today.
I think we were talking about demonetization before this, but
let me switch to my good camera real quick. This is why Chris is getting so cocky about the SoFi shit. This is the one reason why he's getting so cocky about this. Okay.
Look at this guy.
Look at this guy.
This is what Chris sends me this morning.
I can't see that.
It's
I
still
can't see very well.
Just read us the
Second.
numbers. What did it say?
okay. There we go.
73,000, 72,000.
He's up 10,000 on his meta calls, and he thinks he's the smartest guy in the world. And so now he's talking shit about.
Okay.
About
All right.
I'm gonna just leave this camera on because it looks nice.
I know you are, Chris. I love you, buddy. I thought it was funny that out of everything that he said during that podcast, I took the most bullish thing and put it in my video. So I thought that was funny. But yeah, anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks for showing my entire video.
Yeah.
Not skipping
you're
through
welcome.
anything.
Yeah, can we do one of mine next? Like, what the fuck? Man?
Do you have a short 5-minute video?
No, mine are not that entertaining, dude. Tanner has like a whole, like he has a music soundtrack underlaid, and it's yeah, mine are just.
Tanner, how long does it take you to edit one of those videos? Like a couple days?
0 time at all. I send it through Google Drive to my editor, and he takes over from there.
How much does he charge to edit the whole video, front to back?
I'm not gonna say. But there's a big difference between, you'll see whenever I edit and whenever he edits, because they're very, very different styles. And I love his work. And
does he live in the US or does he live somewhere else?
I'm not gonna say.
Okay, he's definitely living.
We'll talk
after. Tanner's paying him slave wages right now.
Yeah, man,
50 cents an hour to fucking edit.
you
It's
talking
okay,
about?
hey man, you gotta do.
Watch one of Tanner's videos and then watch one of mine, and then tell me if you can tell that I edit my own videos. They look like shit.
Your videos are long. I don't get through many of your videos. They're like 19 minutes long on average. I'm like, holy, it's dense. You know, I don't find people have the attention span for it. So sometimes, you know, one person said like this video's on Adderall. I'm like, it's the only way people watch. I'm telling you.
You had like 3 zooms into your face in one sentence. You're like, the Sofi is.
Dude, I was getting anxious. Like it just kept zooming.
Amit, before we get into the Galileo and techniques, can you put up the picture I sent you?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. Let's stay on what I'm predicting Tannor is going to call him T-Bone at some point in the next 6 weeks.
Well, you know what? You wrote your article or whatever, and you threw up the Tanner Manson charts. No reference of my name.
What do you mean?
He stole your charts?
No. They were his charts, but he said on one of the SoFi Weeklies, the one that I actually hosted, he was talking about.
I did make them for you, and I did say that on the channel, and I'll say it again that I made them because Tanner gave me the idea. So I said I would track it for everybody. So Darth Chris had asked or made a statement that was very good and said that somebody should do a bio on Noto to show what type of an operator he is. So I clipped this from LinkedIn so everybody could see his career. In addition to going to West Point and serving in the armed forces and doing his MBA at Wharton, this guy spent 13 years or so in different positions at Goldman. He was a CFO at the NFL. He was the CFO, the COO at Twitter, and is now the CEO of SoFi. So that's a very condensed. There's a lot of information on the deals he worked on at Goldman and what he actually did there on the internet. His interview at Stanford was probably one of the best CEO interviews I've ever listened to. I sent it to a couple of people. I think Chris listened to it and Tanner and the guys. And, you know, this is, if you're going to back somebody and you're going to believe in somebody to execute and get the job done, I don't think you can get a better resume than what we're looking at right here.
Yeah, honestly, he's a true champion, and I've said this. If you've seen any of his podcasts, Who Dares Wins, which even the name kind of tells you what he's about. I mean, he's a military man through and through, and in everything in life, from sports to his careers to work to everything, he just tries to win. Even his son is, you know, taking that to an extreme as well. I mean, he's just a robot whenever it comes to work. And I mean, I'm sure it's a boring life, but as an investor, I love it. Like, same thing with Elon. I just find it's a sacrifice for humanity, and, you know, good for you.
Interestingly, since you brought that up, I found the duality of this week really interesting, where Elon was like selling a huge chunk, and then Noto comes in and buys a huge chunk. I don't know. I just found it really interesting since they happened like a day apart from each other, and it was just like that much more reinforcing of all of these CEOs who are like, you know, you sell for a lot of reasons, you only buy for one reason, right? Just to echo what you said earlier. I think that like Noto buying, especially that big amount that far in between with a 6 month sort of hiatus, was such a strong reassurance to all the SoFi bulls. It sent a very clear message, at least that's how I interpreted it, especially because it was on the same week that Elon sold when he said he wasn't going to sell and all that.
Yeah, but let's not forget, let's give Elon some leeway and come some slack. You know, I've been very critical of Tesla in the past, and I'll just say it. You don't know why he sold, and the speculation is...
Yeah, we do know why he sold. What do you mean we don't know why? He literally sold $3.6 billion, which is as much debt.
He's probably forced to, because he probably had a
margin. So what do you mean we don't know why he sold? That's why he sold.
The margin
did not say it, did he?
I mean, it's not confirmed, but if you look at the amount of equity loan on Twitter, it's literally $3.5 billion. He sold 3.8 billion.
It's logical, but it's still speculation.
What else would he do with the money? I guess is my question.
I'm
What
just
does he need
saying,
3.8 billion for?
unless he says it, it's speculation. But he probably got forced into that sale, so I wouldn't read too much into it. Now, if he's allocating his time the way shareholders want, it's a different story.
Yeah.
But Noto's all in on SoFi. He's not doing other things, and that's from being an executor and being a leader and being somebody that's going to be the driving force behind the company on an operations side. It's what you want to say.
I'm kind of curious to learn how much of Twitter Noto still owns, or if he cashed out completely. Because, I think that would also be interesting as well. Because he had such a huge chunk of Twitter. And, I think from a public portfolio perspective, it's like 90-something% SoFi.
You should get Greta to tweet him and ask. Maybe he'll respond.
Yeah, I mean, she knows, or he knows what buttons to push. But also interesting, the second thing would be to see if it signals us to any other upcoming buys that are coming. Because if he cashed out completely, that's a ton of money that he can funnel into SoFi.